Greetings, my dear friends. Today's story will transport us into a world of ancient mysteries and unsolved enigmas, unveiling the astonishing history of Oak Island and its potential connection to the Knights Templar. What if the greatest secrets of Christendom are hidden not beneath the magnificent gilded altars of Rome, nor within the impregnable vaults of Paris, but beneath the shifting tides of a quiet island, lost far beyond the sea's horizons? Imagine this island, small enough to be easily overlooked on most maps, yet laden with centuries of rumors, speculation, and reverent whispers. Could Oak Island, a humble stretch of land off the coast of Nova Scotia, be the final refuge for relics once carefully guarded by medieval Europe's most powerful, yet most persecuted order, the legendary Knights Templar? Stand on its shore. The salty air clings to your skin. Gulls cry piercingly overhead like restless spirits, eternal guardians of this place. The waters of Mahone Bay shimmer with an unnatural stillness, as if they too hold something unsaid, something hidden from prying eyes. Beneath their mirrored surface, deep within the soil of this unassuming island, a secret might lie, capable of rewriting all known human history. This intriguing question has haunted treasure seekers for over 2 centuries, disturbing minds and hearts alike. What truly rests beneath Oak Island? Gold, glittering jewels, and royal crowns. Riches capable of tempting the most powerful monarchs. Or something far stranger, something much more dangerous and fateful for the entire world. Some whisper of a hidden library, safeguarding forbidden gospels, texts that could alter the foundations of faith. Others speak of sacred relics stolen from Jerusalem, of the Holy Grail itself, a symbol of purity and divine origin, or even the mysterious Ark of the Covenant, bearing power capable of both creation and destruction. And there are those who believe the truth is even more unusual, that what is hidden is not a material treasure at all, but knowledge, proof of an ancient bloodline, surviving centuries, carefully protected by the Templars and buried in complete silence, awaiting its moment. But let us not rush, my dear friends. To navigate this path full of riddles and conjectures, we must slow our steps and listen carefully to the whispers that echo between the lines of history. We are compelled to trace the subtle, barely perceptible threads left by vanished orders and forgotten journeys. These threads drift like seaweed just below the surface of the tide, pointing to long-past events. Every clue is fragile, every possibility beckons, and together they weave a story that speaks as much of profound faith and treacherous betrayal as it does of untold riches. The Knights Templar were once the true guardians of Christendom, powerful and unwavering, both feared and revered across Europe and the Middle East. They marched under banners emblazoned with the Red Cross, protected pilgrims on the perilous journey to Jerusalem, and built a colossal financial empire that eventually became a threat to powerful kings and even to the Pope himself. But in 1307, on a fateful Friday, the 13th of October, the world suddenly turned against them. In a single night, their leaders were seized, their order dissolved by decree of King Philip IV the Fair and Pope Clement V, and their alleged sins proclaimed to the world: heresy, blasphemy, idolatry, and a host of other accusations designed to justify their annihilation. Yet, behind the fires of the Inquisition and the loud condemnations lay a quieter, but far more sinister suspicion. What if their true crime was not the worship of demons or the desecration of the cross, but the protection of something so grand and dangerous that the Church itself could not control it and sought to destroy it? As the Templars were persecuted and their possessions confiscated, their ships mysteriously vanished from French harbors. Historical records, though scarce, indicate that entire fleets slipped away into the night, their cargo unknown and still the subject of fervent debate. Where did they go? Some historians and researchers suggest they found refuge in Scotland, where the order continued to exist in the shadows. Others, that they sailed to Portugal, where they transformed into other orders. But there is a bolder, almost fantastical theory, suggesting that at least some of them sailed west, beyond the horizon, to lands only half remembered on maps and in the tales of rare, courageous sailors. Could it be that they reached the shores of North America more than a century before Christopher Columbus made his famous voyage in 1492? And if so, could Oak Island have become their secret repository, their last and most secure sanctuary for priceless treasures? My dear friends, if you find this story captivating, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video. It is very important for its promotion and helps us create even more engaging content for you. Also, please comment below where you are watching this video from. We are very interested to know the geography of our subscribers. And be sure to watch the video until the very end, as crucial conclusions will be made that tie all the threads together. Link to new videos in the description. Now let's delve into the mystery of Oak Island itself. Let's consider the peculiar nature of this enigma that has captivated the world. When three boys, Daniel McGinnis, John Smith, and Anthony Vaughan, first started digging there in 1795, they didn't just find scattered treasures lying on the surface, but a meticulously engineered shaft, later dubbed the Money Pit. This was not a chaotic burial, but a complex feat of engineering. Wooden platforms made of massive oak logs, placed every 10 feet, approximately 3 meters, along with signs of deliberate human construction, such as layers of coconut fiber, clay, wooden chests, and stones, indicated that someone was building downwards with a specific, extremely important purpose. This was not merely a place to bury gold, it was a sophisticated architecture, a carefully thought-out defense system, a colossal structure designed to preserve something incredibly valuable at any cost. And when water surged through what appeared to be ingeniously crafted artificial tunnels leading directly from the sea, it seemed almost like a living resistance, as if the island itself was actively opposing the intrusion into its depths. These tunnels, known as side drainage systems, were designed to flood the shaft if an attempt was made to penetrate it. Such ingenuity raises many questions. Who, centuries before modern engineering and hydraulics, could have created such complex flood tunnels and traps on a remote island, far from developed civilizations? Few possessed the necessary knowledge and resources, and even fewer had such a powerful motive for such a grandiose project. And so the whispers, again and again, returned to the Templars as the most likely candidates. The Knights Templar were renowned for their exceptional mastery of construction, erecting magnificent castles and cathedrals across Europe and the Holy Land. They were deeply steeped in mysteries. Their order was burdened not only with untold riches, but also, perhaps, with relics and knowledge too dangerous to reveal. They could well have hidden their treasures here, on Oak Island, far from the reach of a greedy crown or an all-powerful church, in a place that would remain unnoticed for centuries. But what treasures, exactly? This is the question that refuses to fade from the minds of researchers, continuing to stir the imagination. Was it simply gold, the untold wealth of a fallen order, which they sought to protect from confiscation? Or was it something much greater, something that could change the course of world history? Some researchers and theorists believe that the Holy Grail was never a simple cup, but a symbol, a metaphor signifying a bloodline, a sacred family line, tracing its origins back to Christ himself. If such proof existed, it would overturn all the foundations of Christianity. Others point to the mysterious Ark of the Covenant, which, according to biblical tradition, unleashes divine power upon those who possess it and brings destruction to those who dare to defile it. Any of these treasures would have been too dangerous to leave in Europe, too tempting for kings and too threatening for popes to allow them to exist peacefully. Hiding them was the only way to preserve them. Today, modern research on Oak Island continues, employing advanced technologies such as sonar, ground-penetrating radar, deep-sea drilling rigs, and robotic cameras. Numerous teams, including the Legina family, have dedicated decades of their lives to unraveling this mystery, facing countless challenges including new floods, collapses, and unexplained phenomena. Official archaeological data confirms the presence of ancient, previously unknown structures beneath the island, but their purpose and creators remain subjects of intense debate. Despite decades of meticulous work and millions of dollars invested, the final answer still eludes them. And so we return to the waves, lapping at the shores of Oak Island. They move with centuries of patience, as if waiting for bold seekers, ready to dig deeper, patient enough to ask the right questions, or perhaps audacious enough to disturb what the ancients intended to remain hidden forever. For over 200 years, treasure hunters, scholars, historians, and mere dreamers have come to this place, each convinced they stand on the very threshold of the greatest revelation. What is the truth hidden in the depths of Oak Island? The answer, perhaps, awaits its moment to change our perception of the past. Despite relentless attempts, Oak Island still guards its centuries-old enigma, shrouded in an impenetrable silence. Could it be that the true nature of this place lies in its reluctance to reveal its innermost secrets? Perhaps its very purpose is to preserve this profound secret, to protect it from prying eyes until some destined moment arrives when the truth can finally emerge to the world. Or perhaps the true value concealed on this mysterious island lies not in the material riches buried deep underground, but in the very sense of wonder, in the endless stream of questions that, like spreading ripples, connect medieval knights with the tireless adventurers of our time. Ancient, almost mythical relics with long-forgotten sea voyages and unwavering faith with inevitable doubt. The profound mystery lurking beneath the coastal waves extends far beyond a mere search for buried objects. It reaches into fundamental questions. Why was something so significant meticulously hidden? And who was behind the desire to keep this secret in complete silence? As researchers and the curious delve deeper into the intricate history of Oak Island, they inevitably find themselves on the shifting boundary between confirmed facts and mystical legends, between what has been irrevocably erased from the annals and what still whispers faintly in every tide. If Oak Island truly is a repository for relics belonging to the legendary Knights Templar, then something far more significant than ordinary treasure rests within its depths. There, beneath the layers of earth, might lie the very heart of a long-forgotten but crucially important chapter of human history, capable of overturning our understanding of the past. The year was 1795. It was a warm, tranquil summer evening in Nova Scotia, when the air was thick with the resinous scent of pine, and through the light breeze drifting from picturesque Mahone Bay, the incessant chirping of crickets could be distinctly heard, creating a unique evening symphony. It was then that three young explorers, filled with the spirit of adventure, wandered along the overgrown paths of Oak Island. Their attention was unexpectedly drawn to an unusual sight, hidden in the shadow of mighty, ancient oak trees. The surface of the ground at this spot appeared clearly disturbed, as if someone had carried out some work here long ago. An intriguing depression, shaped like a shallow but clearly artificial pit, stood out distinctly from the soil. Furthermore, as ancient legends tell, mysterious ghostly lights sometimes appeared in the immediate vicinity of this place, flickering like wandering lanterns, moving in the pitch-black night. It seemed as if someone or something unseen was still intently watching over this secluded corner of the island. The young explorers, of course, could not remain indifferent to such a strange discovery. Their curiosity was boundless. Armed only with their youthful courage and the thrilling anticipation of an unsolved mystery, they began to dig. What they discovered was far from an ordinary layer of earth. Barely a few feet down, their shovels struck solid rock, and then a cleverly laid layer of logs. Beneath this wooden platform rested another layer of dense soil, and beyond that, more timber. All of this was arranged with astonishing precision, as if someone had meticulously planned this complex structure many centuries ago. Each new discovery only deepened the overall enigma. Who could have been the mysterious builder, capable of such massive and labor-intensive work on such a remote island, far from the influence and resources of Europe's great powers? The clang of their shovels echoed through the surroundings, creating a reverberation of unsolved mystery, a rhythm that seemed to perfectly match the growing excitement of the young diggers. However, besides the thrill, there was also an unsettling premonition. This place did not seem like a natural formation. It looked clearly man-made, like a carefully constructed entrance designed to securely guard something sacred. The soil was unusually dense, and the logs were laid with excessive, almost unnatural order. It became obvious someone had built this mysterious pit with a definite, deliberate intention. Perhaps the creators wished for it to be discovered someday, or on the contrary, their true goal was to ensure that this place would forever remain hidden from human eyes. As they stubbornly continued to dig deeper, the summer sun beat down relentlessly, and sweat streamed down their faces. The young men repeatedly encountered new layers of logs, first at a depth of 10 feet, then at 20, and later at 30 feet. These layers seemed endless, each neatly separated by a layer of earth, and each new level only further fueled their determination to continue the search. It felt as if the pit itself had been specifically designed to test their endurance. Soon, many began to call this enigmatic depression the money pit. Yet even in the earliest oral traditions, people already suspected that it concealed something far more valuable and significant than mere piles of coins or glittering jewels. News of the unusual find spread like wildfire among the sparse communities along Nova Scotia's picturesque coast. Rumors of untold buried treasures passed from one household to another, turning into whispers of ruthless pirates and powerful kings, each potentially linked to the mystery. Some confidently asserted that the discovered treasure was undoubtedly the lost fortune of the infamous privateer Captain Kidd. Others hypothesized that it was the spoils of long-forgotten corsairs who sought refuge in the numerous hidden coves scattered along the coastline. However, as the stories and conjectures multiplied, a darker, more unsettling question arose. What if this structure was not the work of common pirates? What if it was backed by some secret brotherhood, possessing deep knowledge of engineering, ancient symbols, and mysteries far deeper and more significant than any gold? Even in those distant early days, the money pit exuded a peculiar aura that extended far beyond a typical treasure hunt. It carried a certain weight, an ominous sense of deeply considered design, as if the place itself was imbued with someone's will. Local fishermen often recounted strange, unexplained sounds that carried across the water in the dead of night, echoes resembling either distant singing or the ringing of faraway bells. Old Mi'kmaq tales, passed down through generations, even hinted that Oak Island itself was unsafe, its soil bearing ancient curses brought from overseas. Yet the young explorers were not to be deterred. With each newly discovered wooden platform, they felt an increasing certainty that they were inexorably approaching something truly monumental and grand. The pit gradually transformed for them from a mere depression in the ground into a genuine challenge, a complex puzzle, and a mysterious, alluring invitation to a great discovery. And yet, beyond its promises, this enigmatic pit also held a warning. With every new foot they reclaimed from the earth, the island seemed to offer more palpable resistance, as if reminding them that what was buried there was not meant to be disturbed by unworthy hands. It was that summer, from the intertwining of youthful curiosity and formidable courage, from the very soil and surrounding silence, that the legend of Oak Island was born. And once that whisper began, it could not be stopped. From humble fishing villages to the opulent halls of wealthy investors, word of the mysterious pit spread like wildfire. Fearless adventurers arrived from all directions, armed with shovels and filled with impossible dreams, firmly convinced that they stood on the brink of a monumental discovery. Yet, Oak Island proved to be a patient and relentless guardian of its secrets. It allowed only fleeting glimpses, intriguing hints, and tantalizing promises of untold riches, but never revealed the full truth. Those first hopeful excavations of 1795 yielded no gold, no precious relics. They left behind only a string of questions which, as soon became evident, often possess far greater power and significance than any ready answers. For what is carefully hidden beneath the earth of this island belongs not merely to physical matter or ancient civilizations. It is an integral part of history itself, and history, when attempts are made to bury and silence it, resists with all its mysterious might. By the early 19th century, the mystery of Oak Island was already firmly rooted in the public consciousness, becoming an integral part of local folklore. Whispers of the extraordinary layers discovered deep underground, and of logs laid with astonishing precision, like steps of some hidden staircase, had long since spread beyond the quiet fishing communities of Nova Scotia, traveling across the continent. News of the mysterious find quickly reached the ears of wealthy individuals, driven by an insatiable thirst for adventure and a desire for widespread fame. Soon, they accumulated the necessary financial resources and tools to resume investigations at the very spot where the three youths had ceased their attempts. Thus began the first truly organized excavations of the phenomenon, destined to forever be known as the Money Pit. Imagine this picturesque yet harsh scene. About a dozen sturdy laborers, their heavy boots sinking into the yielding wet soil, their hands inevitably covered in calluses and abrasions, selflessly wielded picks and shovels, battling against stubborn layers of earth. Their work, however, was neither chaotic nor aimless. At precisely 10-foot intervals, their tireless efforts uncovered the same, almost mystical pattern, neatly laid transverse logs, resembling invisible yet clearly marked thresholds or steps. There was not the slightest randomness here, no hint of natural processes. It was clear that someone had deliberately erected this complex structure. Some unseen architect's intent was for potential intruders to be aware of every step, yet denied the ability to complete their descent. The deeper the men advanced, the more the pit transformed into something far more significant than a mere depression in the ground. It became a descent into silence, a journey into the very heart of the will of mysterious, unseen architects. With each foot, the air grew noticeably cooler, and natural light gradually faded. Even the slightest creak of the wooden structures echoed loudly, as if warning of an intrusion into some ancient, carefully guarded design. Upon reaching the 90-foot mark, this vertical shaft surpassed any known pit in depth, yet still revealed no treasures to the world, only multiplying a series of intriguing enigmas. However, a discovery soon occurred that radically altered the nature of the entire search process. Among layers of compacted earth and old wood, the explorers extracted a flat stone, etched with completely unusual markings. These symbols, despite their apparent crudeness, were clearly deliberate, unlike anything these men had ever seen or learned about. Subsequently, for many generations, it was believed that a message was inscribed upon it. 40 feet below, 2 million pounds are buried. But what if the true meaning of this message was far deeper than it seemed at first glance? What if it didn't concern material wealth at all, but spoke of a certain guardianship, of something so sacred that it could not even be uttered aloud? Despite the multiplying enigmas, the workers relentlessly continued their investigations. With each new level, the depth of their expectations grew. The deeper they delved, the firmer their conviction became that untold, unimaginable treasures surely awaited them beyond the next layer of earth and wood. However, the island itself seemed to have entirely different plans of its own. At the 90-foot mark, at the very moment when the excitement reached its peak, water suddenly gushed in. First a thin stream, then a rapidly increasing torrent, rushing through the invisible, hidden veins of the island itself. The shaft instantly filled with icy, unstoppable seawater, as if the earth itself had awakened from slumber to protect its secret. This was clearly neither a collapse of loose soil nor a simple geological accident. Subsequent, deeper excavations unequivocally revealed an entire system of tunnels, deliberately laid from the bay's shoreline directly to the pit, designed to instantly flood the shaft should anyone dare to penetrate too deeply. Before them was not an ordinary, accidentally discovered secret vault. This was an expertly disguised, secretly constructed fortress whose defensive structures were designed and implemented with an ingenuity centuries ahead of its time. Who then could have been the architect of such an incredible engineering marvel? Could it have been pirates, driven only by greed, but utterly lacking the necessary engineering knowledge and skills? Or was it the creation of some disciplined brotherhood, equally skilled in construction and in the art of concealment? That same mysterious brotherhood that, according to tradition, vanished from Europe under the cloak of brutal persecution in the early 14th century. The men made desperate attempts to pump out the gushing water. They even tried excavating in the immediate vicinity of the main shaft. However, each of their attempts invariably ended in complete failure. The island, it seemed, refused to yield. The treasure was undoubtedly there, so close that its presence was almost physically palpable. But it was securely hidden and protected by the very power of the ocean. Many of those who ventured on these quests ultimately left the island ruined, penniless, and ridiculed by their neighbors, who saw nothing but sheer madness in their aspirations. Yet the inexplicable allure of the money pit never faded, for with every collapse, with every new defeat, the explorers felt the presence of something greater than themselves, a grand force that powerfully pressed upon their dreams and aspirations. This was not just a mundane treasure hunt driven by greed. Rather, it was as if they had accidentally stumbled upon some ancient game whose rules had been established long before their arrival, a game whose immutable rules were carved in unbreakable secrecy, and whose guardians had long since dissolved into the pages of history. Even today, one can vividly imagine the scene, exhausted men resting at night, by the dim, flickering light of oil lamps, gazing into the bottomless, dark maw of the pit. The earth around them seemed to breathe, as if in anticipation of something. The men exchanged quiet whispers. What lies there in those depths? Golden relics, shining with wealth, or something so ancient that it transcends human memory itself, something concealed with such unprecedented care that even centuries proved powerless to reveal this mystery. Thus, with the beginning of these excavations, the legend of Oak Island acquired its own independent life. It became not just another story of buried loot, but a grandiose enigma, stretching across boundless oceans and many centuries, tirelessly beckoning those who are ready to stake everything for just a glimpse into the world of the forbidden and the unknown. The first truly serious confrontation between man and the mysterious island unfolded not in a battle with earth and shovels, but in a struggle with the element of water. Imagine this dramatic scene. Exhausted diggers stand on the very edge of the gaping pit, their faces smeared with dirt and sweat, their muscles aching from weeks of continuous labor. At the 90-foot mark, their hearts pounded feverishly in frantic anticipation. At any moment, they were convinced, their shovels would strike the next barrier of wood and stone, behind which lay a vault, brimming with gold, glittering jewels, or perhaps something far more enigmatic and incredible. But then their ears caught an ominous sound, the slow, unsettling hiss of water penetrating deep into the earth. Within just a few hours, the thin trickle turned into an unstoppable torrent. The pit rapidly filled, as if the sea itself had been summoned to protect its secrets. Pumps were hastily brought to the site. Primitive, yet powerful machines characteristic of the early 19th century. However, no matter how diligently and selflessly the men toiled, the water invariably returned. It made no difference how quickly they tried to pump it out. The money pit, it seemed, possessed a will of its own, firmly determined to forever drown its innermost secret. But what the explorers did not yet know was that they were actually confronting a complex system of flood tunnels, cleverly carved channels that directly connected the money pit to the vast ocean. It was only generations later, in the area of Smith's Cove, that layers of tightly compacted coconut fibers and seaweed were discovered. These unusual materials, foreign to the local flora, acted like sophisticated filters, allowing seawater to seep in and be drawn into the pit through carefully disguised entrances. These structures were clearly not the result of natural geological processes. On the contrary, they were meticulously planned and implemented with a specific purpose. Some mind, possessing exceptional abilities, designed the island itself to securely conceal treasures or secrets hidden within its depths. However, the question of the identity or group capable of creating such a grandiose and astonishing marvel remained unanswered. It immediately became evident that this creation could not belong to ordinary pirates. These sea marauders typically sought to hastily hide their loot, using natural shelters like caves or shallow caches in the ground. But here, the scale was entirely different. Shafts extending almost 100 feet deep, and moreover, protected by an entire system of ingenious water traps, which ruled out the primitive methods of sea brigands. Before the researchers lay something incomparably more complex and sophisticated. The creation of such structures demanded the deepest knowledge in engineering, a masterful command of hydrological principles, and an architectural foresight that was centuries ahead of its time. It was this incredible advancement that led some to begin cautiously, almost in a whisper, uttering the name of the legendary Knights Templar. For who, if not the Templars, exiled from the European continent and desperately striving to preserve their most sacred artifacts and riches, could possess both such a powerful motive and the unique skills necessary to construct such a hiding place. Their architects were known for building impregnable fortresses in Jerusalem, constructing numerous commanderies across Europe, and castles designed to withstand sieges by entire armies. Could Oak Island truly have been their last, carefully disguised redoubt? The most secluded fortress, built not of massive stone towers, but of intricately woven hidden chambers extending deep underground. The constant flooding of this enigmatic pit gradually came to be perceived as an ominous symbol. It seemed as though what was concealed there, be it untold riches or something else, had acquired a will of its own, a stubborn reluctance to be discovered and appropriated. Every attempt made to drain this mysterious depression invariably ended in complete failure. Efforts to create secondary shafts, intended to bypass the main obstacles, led only to new, unpredictable collapses of rock, and each time, water again surged into the passages, icy and relentless, as if nature itself resisted any intrusion. Over time, people began not only to curse this treacherous island for its insurmountable resistance, but also, involuntarily, to develop a deep respect for it appeared before them not merely as a geographical point, but rather as a living, vigilant guardian. Word of its mystical power quickly spread. "The island is cursed," people whispered. Some were convinced that the water here was enchanted, that the sea itself had been summoned into service to guard the hidden relics. Others saw in these complex tunnels the work of some secret society that possessed not only the knowledge of how to build such defensive structures, but also a profound understanding of why they were so vitally necessary. Thus, these constantly flooding tunnels ceased to be mere physical obstacles. They transformed into powerful symbols of a deeper truth. Oak Island was never meant to yield easily. Its main secret, evidently, was designed to remain unsolved and to outlast generations of seekers. Every time an attempt was made to penetrate the very heart of the island, it met with insurmountable resistance, as if history itself, with its centuries-old secrets, tirelessly guarded this mystical threshold. Even today, as powerful modern machines roar, biting into the unyielding soil, the same insoluble problem remains. Pumps work at their limits. Drills relentlessly bore, penetrating deep into the earth. Yet the water stubbornly returns, filling the pit with the same relentless fidelity as 2 centuries ago. It seems as if the Templars themselves, transcending the barriers of time, whisper an invisible warning: this is not for you. What if this relentless presence of water is not just a physical obstacle, but something much more? An encrypted message. Perhaps this constant flooding is the island's way of communicating that humanity is not yet ready for what rests in its depths. The flood tunnels seem to awaken from their slumber on that memorable day in 1804, and since then, they have not ceased their tireless activity for a moment. In their endless, persistent flow, they constantly hint at something deeply unsettling. Sometimes the very earth, it seems, conspires to forever guard its most profound secrets. In those moments when the water relentlessly rose, and with it, it seemed, the last hope drowned, there remained yet another astonishing discovery that invariably haunted everyone who had ever set foot on Oak Island. At a depth of about 90 feet, before the pit was completely engulfed by seawater, workers extracted a massive stone slab from the earth. It was heavy, perfectly rectangular, and surprisingly smooth to the touch. Its surface was etched with mysterious markings, carved symbols that none of the men present could understand or read. This stone was unlike anything ever found in Nova Scotia. Its surface was strikingly flat, as if skillfully carved by human hands, rather than merely smoothed and weathered by the impassive passage of time. The symbols etched upon it belonged to neither English, French, Mi'kmaq, nor even Norse script. It was something entirely different, foreign hieroglyphs that seemed to intriguingly hint at some complex, unknown code. Some observers claimed that the mysterious markings were arranged in neat, orderly rows, almost resembling a coherent sentence. Others, on the contrary, swore they distinctly saw crosses skillfully incorporated into the overall design. The slab was carefully lifted and later placed above a fireplace in a local home, where it immediately became an inexhaustible source of endless speculation and heated debate. Over time, one widely known, though presumed, translation of these mysterious symbols emerged. 40 feet below, 2 million pounds are buried. This was indeed a tantalizing promise that for generations tirelessly fueled the Oak Island fever, compelling treasure seekers to return to its shores again and again. However, today many researchers reasonably suspect that this translation was never authentic or accurate. After all, What sense would it make for anyone to exert such colossal effort, to so meticulously and deeply hide a treasure, only to then leave a mark on the surface, openly declaring its incredible value? Perhaps these mysterious markings were not intended to be read by outsiders at all. Perhaps it was a complex cipher, accessible only to the initiated, or a grim warning, or possibly even a ritualistic seal, intended to magically or symbolically guard this ancient vault. Some astute researchers have noted the striking similarity of these symbols to codes and ciphers used by early Freemasons, who, at least according to long-standing legends, were considered direct heirs to the secret knowledge and treasures of the Templars. Could this stone have been not a guiding clue, but on the contrary, an insurmountable barrier, an ominous marker that silently declared, "Something sacred rests here. Touch it at your own risk." One can imagine the diggers, huddled in a tight group, sitting around a campfire, their eyes fixed on the stone, across whose surface shadows danced whimsically. In the flickering light, the symbols seemed almost alive, whispering of secrets that were so close, yet simultaneously so unattainable. Did they then wonder if they had perhaps stumbled not upon an ordinary treasure trove, but upon something far more dangerous, a relic that perhaps was never meant to see the light of day again? Over the centuries, the mysterious stone itself, about which so many rumors circulated, vanished without a trace into history. Some claim it was irrevocably lost, sinking into oblivion, while others believe it was deliberately destroyed to erase all traces of its existence. However, there are those who, with unwavering certainty, insist on its continued existence, believing that someone prudently hid it from prying eyes, fearing the unpredictable consequences its discovery might bring. From that artifact, only scattered sketches, incomplete descriptions, and a haunting premonition remained, as if the stone held a message that, in its significance, surpassed any material wealth, even the purest gold. If this mysterious slab truly existed, it radically changes the perception of Oak Island, transforming it from a mere site of pirate caches or simple untold riches into a point on the map marked by an intricate, coded intention. It implies that someone, many centuries ago, not only hid something valuable, but also left behind an entire system of symbols, a special language understood only by those who already held the key to its decipherment. And immediately, the natural question arises: who in the annals of history excelled most in creating and deciphering codes, in understanding secret signs and hidden knowledge? The answer to this question often leads to the Knights Templar. These enigmatic warrior monks, as is known, marked their temples with special crosses that were simultaneously a kind of encrypted map. They meticulously concealed their deepest secrets behind symbols accessible for reading only to the chosen few, those initiated into their esoteric knowledge. Their rich legacy, like an invisible thread, passed to Masonic lodges, fueling their ancient whispering traditions, which subsequently spread across all continents. Could the stone from Oak Island have been another, hitherto unknown link in this carefully hidden chain of ancient mysteries? Perhaps the stone itself no longer exists in the physical world, but its memory continues to live on, stubbornly refusing to fade. This memory persistently whispers to us that what is hidden beneath the earth of Oak Island is not the result of chance or mere coincidence. On the contrary, it was a carefully planned, deliberate act, skillfully sealed with symbols that seemed designed to transmit a message across the ages. But with whom was this communication intended? With us, the current curious intruders, or with distant descendants, with guardians who, perhaps, still patiently await the day when the great mystery will finally be revealed? Deep beneath the island's shifting, constantly moving soil, the stone symbols still seem to echo invisibly, speaking in their own language of shadows and faint whispers. And perhaps it is in their profound silence that the true message lies. The real treasure of Oak Island is not what rests within its depths, but in the story itself, in the eternal question that stubbornly refuses to die and continues to trouble the minds of generations. By the mid-19th century, the enigma of Oak Island had long ceased to be merely a local oddity, a subject of curiosity for a few. It had transformed into a true, all-consuming obsession that captivated the minds of many adventurers. Every failed excavation attempt, every sudden ground collapse, every uncontrolled flooding of the shafts not only failed to provide answers, but only further exacerbated the already profound mystery, making it even more insurmountable. And with each new generation that succeeded the previous one, this question became ever more pressing and persistent. Who possessed sufficient knowledge and resources to create such a sophisticated system of traps and tunnels many centuries before the first European settlers even appeared on these shores and mapped them? Initially, some researchers hypothesized that legendary pirates, such as Captain Kidd, or perhaps even Blackbeard himself, known for their habits of burying stolen loot in secluded, forgotten coves, were behind these structures. However, the astonishing sophistication and complexity of the money pit's construction did not at all fit the image of hasty, often ill-considered actions of buccaneers. Pirates typically buried their treasures shallowly, with the clear intention of returning for them within a few years, not centuries. Oak Island's labyrinth, on the contrary, demonstrated an entirely different philosophy. It was designed with the exclusive purpose of reliably guarding something valuable for untold centuries, enduring the onslaught not only of audacious robbers but also of relentless time itself. And then, replacing the pirate legends, a new, persistent whisper emerged, confidently pointing to the Knights Templar. The Templars, these unique knight monks of the 12th and 13th centuries, were far more than just valiant soldiers of the cross. They proved themselves to be unsurpassed master builders, astute financiers, and brilliant engineers. It was they who erected impregnable fortresses throughout the Holy Land, laid hidden tunnels beneath sacred Jerusalem, and developed complex water systems that even today continue to baffle modern archaeologists. If anyone possessed the necessary skills to create secret, artificially flooded channels deep beneath the surface of a remote island, it was undoubtedly them. But why here, in this distant corner of the world? Why Nova Scotia, a land that, it is generally believed, was completely unknown to Europeans in the Middle Ages? Or perhaps it was known after all. Some researchers hypothesize that the Templars, fleeing brutal persecution in the fateful year 1307, sent their fleet west from La Rochelle. These ships indeed vanished without a trace from French ports, and their precious cargo was never officially documented. Could they, then, have crossed the vast expanses of the Atlantic long before Columbus's famous voyage, carrying with them relics that were too dangerous to fall into the hands of greedy kings or power-hungry popes? It is worth carefully considering the historical chronology. In 1307, the French king Philip IV the Fair took decisive steps to completely destroy the Templar order, confiscating their vast wealth and declaring the knights heretics. Overnight, the most powerful and influential order in Christendom became outcasts and fugitives. However, their untold treasures, their extensive archives, and possibly their holiest relics were never found. If one assumes that they transported all this on their ships, then absolute secrecy required concealment in a place so remote and inaccessible that no monarch could reach it. And what then can be said about the complex defenses of Oak Island? They bear no resemblance to an ordinary pirate treasure trove. Rather, they resemble a fortress, devoid of traditional walls, an ingenious trap, created from earth and water, designed to guard something exceptionally sacred. Could this have been the Templars' last, desperate stronghold, built not to protect living people, but to preserve the greatest secret? Of course, there is no direct evidence to support this hypothesis. However, circumstantial evidence hangs in the air, palpable everywhere, like the faint scent of incense in the dim light of an old chapel. Among these are carved stones adorned with crosses, a lead artifact shaped like a Templar cross, discovered centuries later deep in the soil, and mysterious symbols on boulders, strikingly similar to Masonic patterns. None of this evidence, individually, could unequivocally prove the direct presence of Templars on the island. Yet taken together, they seem to whisper of an ancient lineage, a continuity of mystery. It is known that Freemasons themselves have always claimed their spiritual and historical origins from the Templar tradition. Thus, if later generations of Freemasons were so strongly drawn to Oak Island, it may be because they subconsciously felt that their distant ancestors, guardians of ancient knowledge, had already been there long before them. The connection between Oak Island and the Templars is certainly not an undeniable fact, carved in the stone of history. It is rather an ephemeral shadow, an intriguing supposition, a captivating possibility that continues to relentlessly haunt the imagination of many. However, one only needs to listen carefully. In every whisper emanating from the depths of Oak Island's history, in every legend of hidden and carefully protected treasures, the echo of the Templars resonates invisibly. They appear not merely as brave knights or skilled bankers, but as guardians. Guardians who, perhaps, chose this distant, secluded shore as the last refuge for the most forbidden and sacred relics of Christendom. And if this bold hypothesis proves true, then Oak Island will cease to be merely a mystery of untold riches. It will transform into a profound enigma of faith, boundless power, and a legacy that the world, perhaps, was never meant to uncover. October 13th, 1307, entered the annals of history as an ominous date, the night when a coordinated and ruthless blow struck across France, marking the collapse of the Templar order. Everywhere, royal emissaries and their detachments swiftly stormed the knights' commanderies, mercilessly arresting their leaders and confiscating all possessions. Those who tried to resist were immediately beaten, chained, and led away, and those who succumbed to torture and confessed to the charges were immediately condemned as heretics, doomed to a terrible fate. Once a powerful and proud order, whose knights defended pilgrims in the Holy Land and possessed untold riches, it was dissolved almost overnight, its glory and influence dissipating like smoke. However, not all members of the Brotherhood were captured. and far from all perished in the fires of the Inquisition. Historical evidence indicates that in the bustling port city of La Rochelle, where one of the Order's most important bases was located, its formidable fleet mysteriously vanished, as if dissolving into thin air. Some chroniclers and researchers claim that these ships were simply seized by the French crown, augmenting its naval forces. Others insist that they managed to escape persecution. According to this version, under the cloak of deep night, in conditions of absolute secrecy, sails were hoisted, and the ships left the harbor, carrying not only their crews, but also the most sacred treasures of the Order, intended for safekeeping from encroachment. But the true value that these ships might have carried was likely not just piles of gold or glittering jewels. Perhaps they were relics, holy and, more importantly, extremely dangerous artifacts that could not be entrusted to a greedy church or a power-hungry crown capable of using them for their own ends. Imagine these ships, silently cutting through the waves. Their sturdy hulls were burdened not only with material cargo, but also with a great, fateful purpose. Where might their journey have led? Perhaps to Scotland, where sympathetic lords and exiled Knights Templar could find refuge and support. Or to Portugal, where the Order, according to some accounts, quietly reformed under a new name, the Knights of Christ. Or perhaps they ventured even further, beyond the known world, to where complete secrecy would be absolutely guaranteed, and no one could find their traces. If the famous labyrinth of Oak Island was indeed created in the early 14th century, then this timeline remarkably coincides with the period of the Templars' disappearance. In such a case, it could well have been the work of exiled guardians, Knights of the Order, determined to preserve what they carried, even if it meant burying these valuables where they would be inaccessible to kings, popes, and even to human memory itself. One only needs to consider the incredible meticulousness with which the island's defenses were constructed. This was clearly not a hasty, chaotic job. Its execution required deep planning, colossal labor, and selfless devotion to the idea. Building such a complex vault would have taken years, perhaps even decades, and demanded the iron discipline and organization for which the Templars were famous. These were not desperate men simply burying coins in random holes. These were true architects of secrecy, guardians deeply convinced that they were serving a higher, unknown command. But what exactly were they guarding with such devotion? Some researchers suggest that these were ancient manuscripts, perhaps lost gospels telling a different story of Christ, texts that were too dangerous to survive in Europe at the time. Others whisper of sacred relics, the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, or the treasures of Solomon's Temple, which are believed to have been found by the Knights during the Crusades in the Middle East. But there is an even darker theory, that the Templars carried irrefutable evidence of a certain bloodline, a genealogical line that, if revealed, could completely shatter the very foundations of ecclesiastical power and doctrine, questioning its legitimacy. Whether relics, records, or revelations, their preservation was an absolute priority. To protect their burden, the Templars may have sacrificed their own presence in history. Their names were defamed, their great order destroyed, and those who survived were scattered across the world, forced into hiding. However, their secret, if Oak Island is indeed their creation, has survived in deep silence, buried beneath the earth and shrouded by seawater, patiently awaiting its moment. The exiled guardians left behind no charters, no written records, not even maps known to modern researchers. And yet perhaps this was their original intention. For if the treasure they carried was dangerous enough to cause the destruction of the entire order, then it was probably too dangerous to be revealed to the world. And so the ships sailed into legend, and Oak Island itself now whispers stories of itself as a possible refuge, a place where exiled knights could build not just a hiding place, but a true sanctuary, a kind of tomb for secrets too great and powerful for the world above. The idea of medieval ships crossing the vast Atlantic Ocean might seem utterly incredible and fantastical to many. However, history leaves behind tantalizing clues that suggest such an undertaking was not entirely impossible. The Templars, after all, were not only valiant warriors and mystics steeped in secret knowledge. They were also experienced and skilled mariners. Their fleet was one of the largest and most powerful in Europe, and their dominion over the seas could well rival even the influence of the great trading republics of Venice and Genoa. From the bustling ports of the Mediterranean to the rugged harbors of the North Sea, their banners once proudly flew from mastheads, and their ships transported pilgrims, valuable grain, and soldiers across vast expanses of water. And so we must ask ourselves, when the Templar fleet vanished from La Rochelle in that fateful year 1307, could some of those ships have set a course west, rather than the customary east? For medieval Europe, the ocean represented a frontier, simultaneously inspiring both terror of the unknown and promising great rewards. But even in those distant times, rumors circulated across the continent of lands lying beyond the sea. Norse sagas told of Vinland, a fertile shore on the other side of the Atlantic, where Leif Erikson and his companions, according to tradition, established a settlement centuries earlier. Could the Templars have inherited fragments of these ancient stories? Could sympathetic Scandinavians, bound to the order by ties of trade or sacred oath, have shared their unique knowledge with the exiled brotherhood? Imagine their voyage. Large cogs and caravels, sturdy and purposeful, silently gliding into the Atlantic night. They carried no banners, for secrecy was their only shield. Their holds, perhaps, were filled not with riches meant for spending, but with relics meant for concealment. Relics that the world, as it was then, was not ready to see and accept. Guided by the stars in the night sky, driven by desperation and unwavering faith, they crossed the vast and silent expanse of the ocean, searching for a shore untouched by papal decrees or royal edicts. And when the long-awaited land appeared, Nova Scotia, with its countless coves and islands, it would undoubtedly have seemed to them an ideal refuge. Remote, isolated, shrouded in mist, and surrounded by ancient pines, it presented the perfect place where a vault could be built, deep enough and hidden enough to last not just years, but centuries, guarding its secrets. A number of researchers point to intriguing cartographic images that emerged on the European continent long before Christopher Columbus's famous voyage. These ancient maps, like harbingers of future discoveries, contain outlines of coastlines strikingly reminiscent of North America's shores. And this was during an era when, according to generally accepted historical doctrine, the existence of such lands was not yet known to European civilization. A legitimate question arises: were these cartographic evidences merely echoes of ancient Viking voyages, their daring expeditions across the Atlantic? Or were they carefully preserved in secret channels, passed down through generations, until they fell into the hands of powerful and mysterious orders such as the Templars? Furthermore, our attention is inevitably drawn to the stones of Oak Island themselves. Among them are massive boulders, etched with unusual markings and symbols. Some evoke associations with characteristic Templar crosses, while others clearly resemble ancient navigational signs, intended for orientation in the vastness of the sea. A dilemma arises. Are these markings merely whimsical products of natural erosion, created by wind and water over millennia? Or do they represent tangible traces of a long-forgotten but significant journey left by human hand? Suppose the Templars indeed made a daring crossing of the boundless Atlantic. In that case, Oak Island could very well have been chosen by them as the ideal repository, a kind of citadel built from natural elements, earth and water, where their priceless relics could find peace. For their purposes, neither monumental castles nor numerous military garrisons were required here. They needed only deep silence, absolute secrecy, and unlimited time to conceal their treasures. The very act of crossing the Atlantic Ocean was probably not a simple escape from persecution. Rather, it could have been a conscious act of preservation, a deliberate decision to hide something that the European continent would not allow to continue its existence. And so, when one steps onto the shores of Oak Island, listening to the piercing cries of gulls soaring above the waves, and to the rhythmic lapping of seawater against the coastal rocks, one might perhaps catch the ghostly echoes of that ancient voyage. It was a journey into exile that ended not in the bitterness of despair, but in the birth of a hidden legacy, carefully buried deep beneath the earth, long before Christopher Columbus hoisted the sails of his caravels for his fateful voyage. Some cartographic images of Europe already held faint hints of lands that, according to official beliefs of the time, should not yet have been known. Ancient maps, carefully tucked away in dusty monastic libraries or preserved in trade archives, display enigmatic coastlines whose outlines strikingly resemble fragments of the North American continent. In the margins of these manuscripts, one can find unusual, semi-encrypted annotations, as if their creators drew their information from sources of knowledge not intended for public viewing. For example, one such map, attributed to the Venetian Zeno brothers and dated to the 14th century, details sea voyages to the west, across waters that official historiography of that period declared absolutely unexplored and inaccessible. Another striking piece of evidence is the famous Piri Reis map, created in 1513, which depicts the contours of the American continent with truly astonishing accuracy, giving the impression that it was compiled from sources predating Columbus himself. How could such knowledge exist if no known navigator had yet reached these distant shores? Could the Templars, fleeing brutal persecution, have carried such secret maps with them? The structure of their order spanned many continents, and their agents moved freely between seaports, royal courts, and secluded monasteries. They were not only skilled bankers and builders, but also experienced navigators. If anyone had the means to acquire forbidden information about lands beyond the Atlantic, it was precisely them. And if the hypothesis of their journey is correct, then Oak Island could not have been discovered purely by chance. Its selection was undoubtedly deliberate and meticulously planned. Let's try to imagine a secret map, its ink barely visible on ancient parchment, passed from hand to hand under the cloak of confidential whispers. This was no ordinary map, marking kingdoms or trade routes, but rather a guide to sacred sanctuaries, places where priceless relics could be securely hidden, safe from encroachment and the power of monarchs. Did the Templars mark Nova Scotia on such a map, considering that its countless bays and coves were ideally suited for secret concealment, and its remote location ensured absolute secrecy? Some researchers hypothesize that the very landscape of Oak Island bears the imprints of a certain design, as if its surface was shaped into a complex cipher. As evidence, they cite stones arranged in strict geometric patterns, which strikingly resemble ancient navigational symbols, as well as boulders carefully aligned with the cardinal directions, as if marking a ritual compass. To the uninitiated observer, these stones might appear merely as chaotically scattered elements of the natural landscape. However, to the initiated, they might serve as pointers, representing a silent map carved into the very geological structure of the island. Thus, a map leading to secrets probably does not exist on parchment at all. Perhaps the very land of Oak Island is this map, its flood tunnels, its carefully hidden shafts, its stones with carved signs. Each element is an instruction. Each symbol is meant to guide only those who possess the key to understanding them. Other external observers, like us, remain trapped in confusion, surrounded by semi-legends and centuries of fruitless archaeological excavations. If such a map truly existed, whether on ancient parchment or etched into the island's geological structure, then Oak Island ceases to be a simple mystery born of chance. It transforms into a chosen place, a destination to which secret knowledge leads, the end point of a grand journey that began amidst the ashes and ruins of the Templar Order. And perhaps the most unsettling and persistent thought of all is this: what if this map was never lost? What if there are still people who possess the key to deciphering it? Descendants of ancient guardians who know exactly what is hidden beneath the earth, and for what reason it must remain invisible to outsiders. The island itself is silent, but its nature constantly points, guiding researchers ever deeper into its core. And following these invisible yet palpable lines, people delve further and further into the bottomless mystery that stretches across boundless oceans and many centuries, into the forbidden cartography of secrets that perhaps were never meant to be revealed. When the first rumors of Oak Island's notorious money pit reached the public, people immediately envisioned untold treasures, mountains of gold, chests overflowing with ancient coins, jewels scattered haphazardly across stone floors. In short, spoils accumulated by pirates and powerful princes. However, as the decades relentlessly passed, and the pit continued to reveal only new and deeper layers of its centuries-old mystery, flood tunnels, enigmatic boulders, evidence of incredible, ahead-of-its-time engineering, a completely different question began to form in the minds of researchers. What if the true treasure hidden within the island's depths was not material wealth at all? What if it represented something far more sacred, and at the same time, immeasurably more dangerous for the world? Among the many whispered conjectures about the nature of the hidden artifact, two relics particularly stand out: the Holy Grail and the Ark of the Covenant. In popular imagination, the Grail traditionally appears as a sacred cup, the very chalice that Jesus Christ raised during the Last Supper, and, according to tradition, into which his blood was collected during the crucifixion. It is believed to possess the gift of eternal power. Legends claim that whoever dares to drink from it will be granted either eternal life or wisdom surpassing all human understanding. However, in several other traditions, the Grail appears not as a physical vessel, but as a profound symbol, possibly even the embodiment of a sacred bloodline, a carefully guarded line of descent, holding a secret whose recognition would be too dangerous for the official church. The Ark of the Covenant, on the other hand, according to biblical texts, is described as a magnificent chest, skillfully crafted from gold and acacia wood. Its purpose was to preserve the tablets of the law given to Moses. Scriptures testify that its presence brought ailments and misfortunes to enemies, while granting triumph to the Israelites. Careless touching of the sacred object, it was believed, inevitably led to death. For centuries, scholars and tireless treasure hunters have puzzled over the question of its subsequent fate. Some researchers believe it rests in Ethiopia, while others claim it was hidden beneath the ancient ruins of Jerusalem. But what if, caught in the whirlwind of the Crusades, this great relic was entrusted to the Knights Templar, and then secretly transported across the seas to the mysterious Oak Island? One only needs to ponder the complex engineering system hidden beneath the money pit. Here, traps designed for flooding and tunnels calculated to collapse are found. An entire network of mechanisms, excessively sophisticated for protecting an ordinary hoard. This was a defense not of gold bars or jewels. This was the guardianship of something sacred, something capable of fundamentally altering the course of history for entire nations. If the Grail truly rests beneath Oak Island, then perhaps it is not a cup in the usual sense at all, but a collection of records, ancient parchments sealed in waterproof repositories. These documents could contain a truth capable of shaking the foundations of the Christian world, evidence of a sacred bloodline, or texts recounting a long-suppressed history. And if it's the Ark, then the flood tunnels were likely created not only for concealment, but also for containment, ensuring that the dangerous presence of the relic never fell into the hands of those incapable of appreciating its power. Legends, as we know, are often prone to exaggeration. However, Oak Island presents strange, intriguing hints, fragments of ancient parchment, coconut fibers entirely foreign to this region, and a lead cross strikingly similar to Templar relics found in European lands. Each such discovery points not merely to potential wealth, but to a deliberate act. Relics were placed, preserved, and securely protected. The Grail, the Ark, these names are symbols of divine presence, forbidden knowledge, and eternal guardianship. If even a fraction of this is truly hidden beneath Oak Island, then this pit becomes more than just a puzzle. It transforms into a tomb of unprecedented power. And perhaps that is precisely why it has so stubbornly resisted every attempt to be revealed. For some truths, once brought into the world, cannot be reburied, and so the question continues to hang in the air, like an unanswered prayer. Is Oak Island the final resting place of Christendom's most sacred relics? Or does it hold something even more enigmatic, something for which humanity has no suitable words yet? When shovels, picks, and then powerful drilling rigs bit deep into the heart of Oak Island, not everything they brought to the surface was just earth, wood, and water. From time to time, curious artifacts appeared, small, fragmented, but incredibly alluring, as if the island itself was cautiously pulling back the curtain on its mystery, refusing, however, to give it away entirely. At a depth of 90 feet, boreholes once extracted scraps of parchment, fragile and yellowed with age, with barely discernible traces of ink. The letters were too small to make out, but their very presence spoke volumes. Who, centuries ago, would so meticulously bury manuscripts deep underground and beneath layers of wood, unless the knowledge contained within them required absolute protection? Could these scraps be fragments of ancient gospels, records of bloodlines, or texts recounting a long-suppressed history, too dangerous to reveal? In another shaft, seekers stumbled upon coconut husk fibers, entirely foreign to Nova Scotia, yet laid in a dense layer like packing material. Some researchers suggested they were used as a filter for the flood tunnels, to prevent them from clogging with silt. But why import such material from distant seas, unless the builders were experienced seafarers with access to global trade? Wasn't this another silent whisper from the Templars, whose journeys extended from the Levant to the Atlantic, and whose networks spanned entire continents? Iron objects were also discovered, rusty and corroded by time, their forms half lost due to prolonged decay. Some claim these are tools left by early treasure seekers. Others insist they are even older, representing medieval implements, perhaps related to the very process of constructing this mysterious pit. However, one discovery captured the imagination of researchers more than any other. It was a small lead cross, found not in the money pit itself, but on the island's surface. Its shape is striking, almost identical to Templar crosses carved into the walls of ancient chapels in France. Could it have been accidentally dropped by one of those exiled guardians centuries ago, as they secretly toiled to conceal their mysterious cargo? Skeptics, of course, argue that such artifacts prove little. The cross could have belonged to later settlers. The parchment could be a result of careless storage, the fibers remnants of ship cargo. And yet, when gathered together, these fragments form a pattern that seems less like a series of coincidences and more like the edges of a magnificent tapestry, which remains, for now, inaccessible for full viewing. Each discovered artifact is like a whisper from the distant past, fragile and incomplete. None of them alone is sufficient to unequivocally prove the presence of ancient relics. None of them can fully solve the mystery. And perhaps this is its true meaning. The island allows only fleeting glimpses, never giving full certainty, as if reminding us that some secrets are meant to exist forever. Nevertheless, when holding that lead cross in one's palm, cold and palpably heavy, it becomes almost impossible not to feel the centuries-old weight of history. It is hard not to imagine a Templar knight, exiled and persecuted, pressing it to his chest in silent prayer before forever committing his burden to the earth. And of course, it is impossible not to wonder, does the soil of Oak Island hold not just a long-sought treasure, but the very sacred relics that once ignited the flames of faith and intrigue across Europe? The artifacts, however fragmented, serve as a powerful invitation. Each found item seems to beckon researchers deeper, urging them to continue relentless excavations, not only within the island's depths, but also within the depths of human history. As more enthusiasts and dreamers flocked to Oak Island, the mystery surrounding the island began to transcend mere physical excavations in the soil and seawater. The question was no longer solely about the ingenious engineering solutions of ancient builders, but also about symbols, enigmatic marks carved in stone, etched on trees, and passed down through generations via local lore. Many began to suspect that Oak Island itself was a cipher, a complex riddle skillfully inscribed into the landscape of earth and stone. Some early researchers reported finding boulders with curious marks, lines, and crosses that appeared to be deliberately placed, though heavily weathered by centuries of wind and rain. Particularly observant individuals swore that, when viewed from above, these stones formed distinct patterns, triangles, crosses, or compasses that remarkably echoed the principles of sacred geometry, so cherished by the Knights Templar and their presumed spiritual heirs, the Freemasons. And of course, one cannot forget the legendary inscribed stone, retrieved from the money pit at a depth of 90 feet. Its symbols became deeply etched into collective memory, even if their precise depiction was not always preserved in official records. To this day, scholars and enthusiasts fiercely debate the meaning of these mysterious marks. Was it a warning, a guide, or a statement of ownership? Theories regarding its content range from primitive pirate shorthand to a complex Masonic code. Each interpretation seems plausible to some extent, yet none has been definitively proven. Freemasons, in particular, became deeply involved in this enigma. In the 19th century, many of those who financed and led excavations on Oak Island were members of this brotherhood, individuals immersed in a world of allegory and secret symbols. For them, Oak Island was far more than just a treasure hunt. It was a kind of pilgrimage into the unknown, an echo of ancient rituals that spoke of hidden knowledge and lost wisdom. Is it possible that this is why Freemasons felt compelled to dig here? Because they recognized something familiar, the signs of their ancient spiritual ancestors, the Templars. Some researchers are convinced of this, for in lodges and secret manuscripts, Masonic traditions often hint at the preservation of Templar secrets long after the presumed destruction of the order. If Oak Island truly contained Templar signs, then it was not just another mystery. It was a continuation of sacred guardianship. Ciphers, as we know, thrive on ambiguity. Each new theory inevitably gives rise to the next. Each discovered code invites yet another layer of speculation. Some claim that the arrangement of key features on the island, the money pit, Smith's Cove, the triangular swamp, forms a hidden diagram, perhaps a star chart or a compass rose pointing to something even grander. For others, these patterns are no more than projections of desire, an attempt to impose meaning where none originally existed. However, codes are powerful not because they are solved, but because they hint. They whisper that something important lies beneath the surface, just out of reach, yet still tantalizingly close. Oak Island thrives on this premise. Its stones, its carvings, its hidden alignments, all beckon the imagination into an endless labyrinth of possibilities. And perhaps this was the original intent. Perhaps the builders wanted the uninitiated to get lost in endless interpretations, while only those who held the true key could unlock the coveted vault. For most, the island remains an unread manuscript, a book of secrets whose language is symbols and whose grammar is profound silence. To grasp the deeper allure of Oak Island, one must once again turn to the 14th century, to the moment when the Order of the Templars was ruthlessly destroyed by the Crown and the Church. Their downfall was not merely another political maneuver. It was a veritable firestorm of accusations, designed to erase them not only from power, but from human memory itself. The charges brought against them were truly damning: heresy, blasphemy, the performance of secret rites. They were accused of spitting on the cross, of worshipping a mysterious head, of denying Christ himself. Many historians are inclined to consider this fabrication tools of King Philip IV, designed to justify the seizure of their immense wealth. However, the speed and ferocity of the persecution suggests something far greater. Perhaps it was the fear that the Templars possessed knowledge too dangerous to be left unchecked. On that fateful October night in 1307, hundreds of knights were dragged from their commanderies. Some were broken on the rack, their bodies stretched until bones cracked. Others were burned alive, their ashes scattered to the wind. Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master, was tied to a stake on the Ile de la Cité in Paris. Flames consumed him as he, according to tradition, cried out a curse against the Pope and the King. The smoke of his martyrdom still lingers in the legends of France, but persecution could not destroy everyone. Many knights managed to escape, carrying with them the order's treasures, be it gold, priceless relics, or forbidden truths. In Scotland, Portugal, and perhaps even across the Atlantic, the spirit of the Templars endured. Fire consumed their name, but not their legacy. It is here that Oak Island fits into the annals of history, like a shadow gliding along the edge of a bright flame. For if the Knights Templar truly transported their sacred relics across the seas, they surely required a refuge completely inaccessible to papal decrees and their all-encompassing power. The complex trap systems discovered in the mysterious pit, its relentlessly guarded secrecy, and its stubborn refusal to yield to researchers. All of this appears as an echo of the deep despair of people who witnessed the torture of their brothers and the betrayal of their own faith. They were not merely concealing untold treasures. Rather, they were protecting them from the very powerful forces that once controlled them. One only needs to consider the astonishing thoroughness with which this island resists any attempts at intrusion. Every sudden flood, every ground collapse, every failure in the search seems less like a series of accidents and more like part of a grand design, as if the sacred secret buried within its depths must remain an impenetrable shadow until the entire world is ready to accept it. Or perhaps until the world is never ready for it. The fires of inquisitorial persecution not only ended the existence of the Templar Order, they also scattered the seeds of their legacy to the winds of history. And perhaps one of these seeds took deep root across the Atlantic, where the pine forests of Nova Scotia whispered over a carefully hidden vault, and the very soil became a silent tomb for secrets too dangerous for the world above. In every glimmer of Oak Island's mystery, researchers still catch reflections of that ominous flame of 1307, which consumed bodies but failed to destroy truths. The smoke of those distant events has long since dissipated, yet the whisper remains. A whisper that persistently suggests that the island is not merely a treasure riddle, but rather the last testament of persecuted knights who chose absolute secrecy over surrender. When it comes to the Templars and their irrevocably vanished treasures, most people invariably imagine piles of gold, chests overflowing with coins, and jewels dazzlingly sparkling in torchlight. However, what if the true treasure they so zealously guarded was not material wealth at all, but a bloodline, a carefully concealed lineage, tracing its roots back to the earliest days of Christianity? Some ancient legends suggest that the Templars, during their time in Jerusalem, discovered something far more significant than mere relics. It is said that deep beneath the Temple Mount, they found ancient manuscripts and secrets preserved from the time of Christ himself. Among these, perhaps, were records indicating a hidden truth that Jesus had descendants, a bloodline that continued in complete silence, protected by those who dared to defy the omnipotence of church authority. If such knowledge truly existed, it would pose an incredible danger. To reveal it would be to directly challenge the very authority of Rome, to undermine centuries of dogma. And so the Templars, perhaps, decided to become the guardians of this secret. They became not only protectors of sacred relics, but also preservers of a bloodline, ensuring that the truth would survive, even if they themselves were doomed to perish. Oak Island, in this narrative, transforms into something far greater than a mere repository. It becomes a crypt for evidence. The flood tunnels, the ingenious traps, the enigmatic symbols on the stones, each represents a barrier, designed not to protect gold, but to preserve memory. Perhaps the parchments were sealed in oiled leather, their inks preserving records of genealogies or gospels long erased from official scripture. Perhaps relics were also placed alongside them, chalices, crosses, or even bones that, it is said, carried holy blood. Consider the symbolism of the cross found on Oak Island, which in its form resembles Templar relics known from Europe. Was it dropped by chance, or deliberately left as a marker for future guardians? Also noteworthy are the fragments of parchment extracted from the money pit, fragile and stained with ink. Were they merely scraps of long-forgotten testimonies, traces of words once intended to shake the very foundations of faith? If the Templars truly guarded a bloodline, it would explain their brutal persecution. The Church could tolerate wealth, even power, but not a challenge to its spiritual monopoly. To transport such knowledge west, to hide it beneath a remote island, would have been an act of both defiance and profound devotion. And so Oak Island whispers not only of treasures, but of origins. It suggests that what lies below is not for enrichment, but for eventual revelation. A revelation that, if unveiled, could change the very history of Christendom. Of course, no one can know for sure. The earth stubbornly keeps its silence, and the sea tirelessly guards its channels. And yet, listening to the island's whispers, researchers feel the full weight of this incredible possibility. Perhaps beneath these layers of oak and stone lies a story the world was never ready to hear. A story of bloodlines and relics, hidden by knights who chose secrecy over surrender, guardianship over glory. For over 2 centuries, Oak Island has tested all who dared to seek its secrets. Fortunes have been spent, families ruined, and human lives irrevocably lost. The island does not yield easily, and so a legend has arisen that a curse is attached to it, demanding a terrible price. Local lore whispers that before the treasure can be found, 7 people must die. Only then, when the blood debt is paid, will the island condescend to reveal its secret. This is a chilling prophecy that lives in the minds of every generation of treasure hunters, and deaths there have been. Men crushed by collapsing shafts, others drowned in sudden surges of seawater. One perished from poisonous gases seeping from the depths. Each tragedy serves as a reminder that Oak Island does not forgive intrusion. By some counts, 6 lives have already been taken. If the curse is true, then only 1 more life must be lost before the vault surrenders. Is this curse merely a tale concocted by weary diggers to explain their many misfortunes? Or does it represent something far more fundamental, skillfully woven into the island's original design? Could the Templars, or whoever the true builders of the money pit were, have securely encrypted their secret, using both ritualistic ceremonies and engineering cunning? Medieval minds were entirely absorbed in symbolism. They held a deep belief in sacred numerical values, in sacred vows sealed with blood, meant to guard artifacts of unimaginable power. Undoubtedly, they would have resorted to both material and spiritual methods of protection. The number 7 itself is imbued with profound meaning. 7 days of creation, 7 seals of the apocalypse, 7 Christian virtues, 7 deadly sins. The requirement of 7 lives could be something far more significant than mere superstition. It could be a sacred covenant, a kind of guarantee that intertwines deep faith with the inevitability of fate. Each modern death is recorded like another line in a grim litany. Relatives and loved ones mourn their losses, but the legend only gains strength, as if the island's very earth hungers. The curse transforms into an integral element of the island's defense system, no less effective than any skillfully designed flood tunnel. It sends an unambiguous warning that persistently pursuing the solution to the mystery means staking not only material well-being, but also one's very existence, and so seekers arrive with undisguised apprehension, constantly looking back at the ominous shadow of the curse hovering over the island. And yet they continue to come, for the alluring promise of a grand revelation proves more powerful than any fear. What artifact could possibly prompt such a sacrifice? What sacred truth could demand such a high price? The curse of 7 hangs over the island like a thick fog. Whether it is a product of superstition or part of an ingenious design, it reminds us that some secrets are not given away easily. They are paid for with hard labor, deep sorrow, and spilled blood. And until the 7th life is lost, or until this ancient tradition is dispelled, the innermost heart of Oak Island remains securely sealed, patiently waiting in deep silence, hidden beneath layers of earth and seawater. Over the centuries, the Templars transformed into barely discernible shadows of bygone eras. Their name was anathematized by powerful monarchs, and their brethren were mercilessly scattered across the world. However, their unseen whisper did not cease. They found new refuges, new sacred symbols, and new, equally strict oaths, which migrated into the complex rituals of another, equally enigmatic brotherhood, the Freemasons. Freemasonry originated on the European continent in the 17th and 18th centuries. However, its ancient traditions often rooted back to significantly more distant times. Its rituals concealed subtle, veiled references to Solomon's temple, to esoteric hidden knowledge, to the sacred mission of preserving truths considered too sacred for uninitiated eyes. And among these traditions, a persistent rumor circulated that the Freemasons were direct heirs to that very Templar legacy. The similarities between them are truly striking. Both orders deeply revered the principles of sacred geometry and exalted architecture. Both imbued deep meaning into ambiguous symbols, compasses, squares, crosses, and stars. Both tirelessly spoke of the mystery of initiation, strict secrecy, and the unwavering guardianship of ancient knowledge. For some, they appeared as profound mystics and wise philosophers. For others, the Rosicrucians were the true successors of the ancient Templar tradition, diligently continuing the mission of preserving sacred relics and guarding secret bloodlines. It is quite logical that inquisitive researchers began to discern invisible traces of their presence on Oak Island. The patterns and marks observed on ancient stones and mighty trees strikingly resembled characteristic Rosicrucian emblems. Some claimed that the island's topography itself, with its remarkable geometry of triangles and crosses, seemed to reproduce diagrams found in Rosicrucian texts, serving as a kind of cosmic map, designed to guide seekers to the understanding of divine truth. Is it possible that members of the Rosicrucian order were drawn to Oak Island many centuries after the Templars' departure? Perhaps they recognized it not just as an island, but as a sacred place, a potential repository of hidden relics. Or perhaps, as some suggest, they themselves inherited this sacred mission of guardianship. In this view, Oak Island was not abandoned after the tragic fall of the Templar Order. It continued to be an integral part of an unbreakable chain of secrecy, passed from one secret order to another, each swearing an unbreakable oath of silence, layering new strata of symbols and even greater secrecy, further obscuring its true nature. It was believed that the Rosicrucians carried out their activities invisibly, their adepts remaining in the shadows, and their works hidden in plain sight. This strikingly echoes Oak Island's stubborn reluctance to reveal its secrets. Any attempt to unearth something tangible here is akin to chasing fleeting shadows, allowing only glimpses of fragments, but never touching the whole. This is the essence of the Rosicrucian mystery, a truth that undoubtedly exists, yet stubbornly remains hidden from prying eyes. Some researchers even hypothesize that Oak Island itself could have been a kind of Rosicrucian temple. Its landscape features, it would seem, are arranged in accordance with the principles of an alchemical diagram. The famous pit, the mysterious swamp, and various alignments, all of these were likely elements of a carefully designed ritual landscape, intended to guide not the physical body, but the enlightened spirit. In this view, the true treasure is not material at all, but spiritual enlightenment, sacred knowledge intended exclusively for those who can decipher its symbolic signs. And yet, tireless treasure hunters continue their excavations, searching for gold and material riches where, in all likelihood, they do not exist. True Rosicrucians would undoubtedly appreciate the full depth of this irony, for their greatest lesson was that true wealth is hidden not in the depths of the earth, but in the depths of the human soul. Despite this, striking parallels continue to persist: impenetrable secrecy, mysterious symbols, complex geometry. Each new layer of Oak Island's mysteries only deepens the suspicion that the island was not just a random hiding place, but a carefully planned, deliberate sanctuary. Its sacred guardianship was passed down through orders shrouded in silence and hiding in the shadows. Whether it's the influence of the Templars, the Rosicrucians, or a synergy of both orders, their legacy lives on, and Oak Island, silently resting beneath the canopy of its ancient trees and washed by eternal tides, may well still be the repository of their greatest and most profound secret. Throughout the many centuries of human history, as soon as faint whispers of forbidden truths began to be heard, powerful structures immediately rose in opposition, striving to silence these voices. The Templars were accused of heresy not only because of their immense wealth, but also, perhaps, because of the profound knowledge they possessed. The Rosicrucians, in turn, were dismissed as products of fantasy, their manifestos banned and burned, Even Masonic lodges, which emerged centuries later, faced persecution from both the Church and the Crown. This pattern, invariably, repeats itself again and again. Knowledge capable of undermining the foundations of power inevitably must be buried. If Oak Island truly conceals ancient relics or priceless records within its depths, then it is perfectly understandable that such a repository would be hidden in a place far beyond the reach of both secular kings and spiritual popes. Imagine ancient parchments, carefully sealed in oiled leather, recounting a genealogy that the official church could under no circumstances accept, or containing texts that contradicted sacred scripture. Picture such relics as the legendary Grail, the mysterious Ark, or even bones that, according to tradition, carry holy blood, the very existence of which would be capable of shattering centuries of ecclesiastical dogma overnight. Such knowledge, if it had been made public in medieval Europe, would inevitably have torn the Christian world into countless fragments. The papacy, whose position was already extremely fragile, might not have withstood and collapsed under the unbearable weight of a truth so irrefutable that it would be impossible to deny. Kingdoms, whose thrones were built on the foundation of divine right, would inevitably have faltered if their sacred foundations proved to be false. That is why those who possessed this fateful knowledge had no choice but to meticulously hide it, not driven by greed or self-interest, but solely by acute necessity. Suppression, however, cannot erase truth from existence. It merely forces truth into a deep shadow, where it continues to linger, like an elusive ghost. And Oak Island, with its countless layers of concealment, may well represent the ultimate act of such suppression. A vault constructed not for the enrichment of its creators, but to forever silence their potential revelation. One only needs to consider the stubbornness with which the island itself resists any attempts at intrusion. Every ingenious trap, every sudden collapse, every tragedy that befell researchers seems less like a chain of coincidences and more like part of a carefully thought-out design, as if the sacred secret buried within its depths must remain in deep shadow until the world is ready for it, or perhaps until the world is never ready for it. The suppression of knowledge has always exacted its inevitable toll. History remembers how the Knights Templar paid for their secrets with their own lives, falling victim to persecution. The Rosicrucians, shrouded in mystery, vanished into obscurity, their teachings hidden from the uninitiated for centuries. The Freemasons, despite constant suspicion and persecution, managed to endure through the centuries, preserving their traditions. Each of these groups, like a whisper in the wind, carried echoes of something grand, something forbidden, that was hidden from the world's eyes. And perhaps all of them, each in their own way, were guardians of the same ancient legacy, tirelessly protecting the great mystery of Oak Island so that it would remain in absolute silence. In this regard, the inevitable question arises: what will happen if such carefully guarded knowledge is finally revealed to the world? Will it bring long-awaited enlightenment to humanity, elevating it? Or, on the contrary, lead to complete destruction? Will it become a source of universal unity and harmony, or will it plunge the world into a maelstrom of chaos and discord? Those who once built this enigmatic vault were likely tormented by these very same troubling questions. Perhaps that is why they made the fateful decision to prefer concealment over revelation, to choose silence instead of public proclamation. And it is for this reason that Oak Island remains to this day both a powerful symbol and a formidable warning, tirelessly reminding us that some truths possess such colossal power that their preservation demands absolute concealment. Not because they are false or mistaken, but because they are too dangerous to utter and comprehend. If Oak Island truly hides a relic of immense power within its depths, it is logical to assume that it was never left without reliable protection. For many centuries, traversing the boundless oceans, there likely existed guardians, individuals whose devotion was tied not to a thirst for glory or recognition, but to an unbreakable oath of silence and fidelity to their duty. Some ancient traditions tell of Knights Templar who did not perish in the flames of inquisitorial persecution, but managed to hide in deep shadows, carrying with them the heavy burden of guardianship. They became wanderers. Their white cloaks were discarded, and sacred crosses hidden from prying eyes. And yet, in secret from the whole world, their ancient vows remained unbroken. Their duty extended not to earthly kings or Roman popes, but to the mysterious relic they guarded, and to the great truth it embodied. Perhaps they themselves arrived on Oak Island, constructing this vault with their own hands, weaving their esoteric symbols into the stone and skillfully embedding traps in the earth and the tide. Or equally likely, they entrusted this daunting task to their loyal allies, experienced sailors, initiated Freemasons, or wise mystics, leaving behind only an enigmatic map of symbols that only their initiated brethren could decipher. In subsequent centuries, the whisper of legends indicated that the Guardians continued their invisible mission. Local farmers spoke of mysterious strangers appearing on the island, glimpsed only for a moment among the dense trees before vanishing without a trace. Early diggers shared stories of being constantly watched, as if unseen eyes followed their every move. Were these merely figments of imagination, or were they true echoes of an ancient lineage of protectors, tirelessly ensuring that the secret remained untouched? The very idea of guardianship is by no means unprecedented in human history. Many sacred relics have for centuries been guarded not in impregnable fortresses, but in deep silence, protected by secret bloodlines sworn to eternal secrecy, passed down from generation to generation, from father to son, from master to initiated apprentice. The guardians of Oak Island, if they indeed exist, are perhaps no different from these ancient sentinels. They likely still quietly dwell among us, their legacy unspoken, and their mission unwavering and steadfast. Silence itself, perhaps, is their greatest defense. To utter a word would be to betray their oath. To reveal the secret would be to devalue centuries of selfless sacrifice. That is why the guardians remain hidden from view. Their presence is felt only in how the island itself stubbornly refuses to yield, as if invisible hands still protect its innermost heart. If this is truly the case, then Oak Island is not abandoned. It is not forgotten. It is guarded, cared for, preserved not by mighty castles or impregnable walls, but by the profound silence of those who still remember and honor their oath. And so we must ask a profound question. When modern treasure seekers conduct their excavations, are they challenging merely the earth and water? Or are they challenging an ancient brotherhood that has existed invisibly for 7 centuries? Guardians who still walk in silence, tirelessly ensuring that the secret of Oak Island remains precisely where it was once placed. As centuries passed and technology steadily advanced, the mystery of Oak Island not only did not fade, but, on the contrary, only grew stronger and more entangled with new enigmas. By the 19th century, organized syndicates had formed, aiming to penetrate deeper into the money pit, using state-of-the-art steam pumps, powerful drills, and eventually explosive dynamite. However, each new attempt seemed invariably to face the same fate. Floods, sudden collapses, and bitter disappointments followed one after another, as if the island itself mocked human ambition and perseverance. Drilling rigs, penetrating the depths, brought to the surface astonishing samples, fragments of an unknown metal, links of old chains, and most intriguingly, tiny pieces of parchment with barely discernible traces of ink. These were not mundane pirate treasures, but rather hints of something carefully hidden, something written, recorded, and carefully preserved. The parchment, in particular, pointed to the existence of archives, not just gold deposits. Perhaps these were ancient records detailing bloodlines or relics that were too dangerous to keep in Europe. In the 20th century, entirely new technologies were brought into the struggle for the island's secret. Excavators used sophisticated sonar, conducted geophysical surveys, and even lowered special cameras into deep boreholes. The resulting images were truly haunting. Glimpses of what appeared to be wooden beams, voids resembling artificial chambers, and even objects that some swore distinctly resembled chests. However, the murky subterranean world prevented complete certainty. Every clue obtained was only partial, as if the island deliberately allowed just enough to be seen for seekers to continue their endless quest. Smith's Cove also demonstrated engineering solutions that surpassed all expectations of its time. Stone drains, branching out like human fingers, skillfully directed seawater into the flood tunnels. Creating such a complex system required not only outstanding skills, but also a purposeful intention, serving as convincing evidence that the builders were truly extraordinary individuals. They sought to make their vault impregnable not through brute force, but through ingenuity and thoughtful design. And yet, that strange curse hanging over the island did not disappear. People continued to lose their lives, their numbers growing. Financiers who invested their fortunes in the search went bankrupt, and families disintegrated under the unbearable burden of obsession. Each new expedition, it seemed, demanded not only significant financial investment, but also a blood sacrifice. The legend of the 7 deaths continued to live in whispers, and this ominous count inexorably approached its completion. Even in the 21st century, the island retains its inaccessibility. Modern excavators, equipped with powerful drills and heavy machinery, face the same insurmountable difficulties as their predecessors centuries ago. Tunnels unexpectedly collapse, shafts flood with water, and scans meant to reveal the secrets of the depths show only enigmatic anomalies that never provide anything but vague shadows. And yet this allure, this tempting mystery, continues to draw. For every failed excavation attempt, there is a randomly found fragment of parchment. Behind every collapse follows a glimpse of mysterious metal. Every ruin, every destroyed section, offers researchers a lead cross, extracted from ancient soil. Each such fragment rekindles hope, revives the promise that something truly extraordinary is hidden deep underground. The island does not surrender. It does not reveal its secrets directly, but it hints. It whispers its mysteries. It entices generation after generation into its complex labyrinth, where every turn hides a new enigma. Modern excavations are just the latest chapter in a centuries-old story. A saga that, perhaps, will not be completed until the island itself decides it is time to reveal what it so carefully guards. With each new failed excavation, with each tiny fragment extracted from the viscous mud and salty seawater, the mystery of Oak Island only deepens, becoming ever more intricate. And as this mystery expands, so do the theories. Like branches on a mighty tree, each striving to reach the sacred secret held in the island's heart. Some researchers firmly adhere to the Templar connection theory. For them, the discovered geometry, the cross resembling an ancient relic, and the parchment fragments all point to a medieval origin of the mysterious structures. They see Oak Island as a refuge for loyal knights, a carefully concealed vault designed to protect priceless relics of Christendom from the encroachments of the Pope and the King. Others believe the island's mystery predates the Templar era. They speak of ancient mariners, perhaps Phoenicians, who dared to cross the Atlantic long before Columbus's voyages, leaving behind engineering marvels remarkably advanced for their time. In this interpretation, Oak Island appears not as a medieval repository, but as a much older site, its treasure linked to forgotten empires and lost civilizations. There are also those who propose a more prosaic, earthly origin, believing that the mysterious pit was built by Spanish sailors hiding looted gold, or by British engineers concealing military chests. However, the astonishing complexity of the tunnels, the scale, and the sophistication of the flooding system make such explanations too insignificant compared to the immense weight and depth of the mystery. Some researchers turn to ancient legends. They see Oak Island not just as a repository of gold, but as a kind of stone library, a place where manuscripts of forbidden gospels, ancient genealogies, or even maps of other sacred sites were sealed. In this light, the island's treasure is not untold riches, but invaluable knowledge, awaiting its moment to change the course of history. Some go even further in their assumptions. They whisper of the Ark of the Covenant, its golden chest resting in the soil of Nova Scotia, its mighty power dormant beneath layers of oak and clay. Others speak of the Grail, imagining it not as a cup, but as a bloodline, a truth encoded in ancient parchment and carefully preserved in deep secrecy. Each of these theories remarkably reflects the desires and aspirations of its era. For pirates, it was gold; for mystics, sacred relics; for seekers, profound knowledge. Oak Island becomes a kind of mirror, reflecting the hopes and fears of those who dare to approach its shores. And perhaps that is why the mystery lives on, because it offers not a single answer, but 1,000, each seeming as compelling as the last. Ultimately, however, the island itself remains silent. It neither confirms nor denies any of the versions. It simply watches as century after century, people project their dreams and fantasies onto its ancient soil. Theories multiply, but the truth remains deeply buried, waiting in shadows inaccessible to human understanding. If Oak Island truly holds a treasure, perhaps it is not what the world is ready to see or accept. For the relics most often whispered about in legends are not merely gold or jewels, but items associated with sacred, inexplicable power. Relics that could potentially shatter established beliefs, overthrow kingdoms, and rewrite the very history of humanity. The Ark of the Covenant is one such powerful relic, said to contain the tablets of the law. It has been described as a vessel of divine presence, and simultaneously a weapon of terrifying power. If the Templars indeed found it beneath the Temple Mount, as legend suggests, they would have been compelled to guard it with their lives. Could Oak Island be the Ark's final resting place, sealed in a secure chamber, protected by sea and stone? Then there is the Holy Grail, often depicted as a cup, but in other traditions described as a vessel of blood. Some claim it was not a physical object at all, but a bloodline, a living legacy of Christ. If records or relics confirming this truth were hidden, Oak Island would have been the ideal sanctuary, beyond Rome's influence, beyond the reach of kings. Others whisper of sacred manuscripts, lost gospels, apocryphal texts, ancient genealogies deliberately erased from canonical scriptures. Fragments of parchment, retrieved from deep boreholes, only fuel such speculation. Could they have been scraps of a larger archive, written proof of truths that were too dangerous for medieval Europe? Still other researchers envision bones, perhaps even the remains of revered or, conversely, despised historical figures, relics of saints, or perhaps relics of a far more significant, fateful individual. Such discoveries would not bring wealth, but could cause profound global destabilization. To possess such artifacts would mean to acquire unquestionable power, capable of altering the very essence of faith, its fundamental dogmas and foundations. Perhaps it is for this profound reason that the mysterious vault remains securely sealed. The prohibition on these relics is dictated not by their presumed falsity, but rather by the unbearable weight of the truth they carry. Spiritual institutions, such as the Church, could not allow their disclosure, fearing irreversible consequences. Perhaps, even in the current era, humanity is not yet ready to confront such an astonishing reality. Thus, Oak Island acts as a silent guardian, protecting these artifacts in its mysterious silence. The numerous traps, the curse that envelops it, and its centuries-old silence serve not merely as a barrier against greedy plunderers, but as a much more significant defense, a shield against an unwelcome revelation capable of shaking the foundations of the world. To undertake excavations in this place means not only to strive for the discovery of material wealth, but also to dare to uncover truths that have been hidden beneath layers of earth and time for many centuries. The forbidden relics continue to dwell in deep shadow, and only their elusive whisper, carried by the wind and water currents, reaches those who dare to approach. And no matter what is hidden in the depths, be it the legendary Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail, long-lost Gospels, or something even more mysterious and inexplicable, one fact remains undeniable. If these artifacts are ever brought to light, the world as we know it will undergo irreversible changes. For many centuries, Oak Island has retained its unchanging essence. The trees on its surface continue to sway in the wind. The tides regularly rise and fall, and storms fiercely rage over its shores. However, despite all these superficial changes and the cyclical nature of phenomena, a profound secret has been preserved for centuries deep beneath layers of soil and stone. Numerous shafts dug by seekers and modern drilling rigs inserted into its body have pierced only the island's outer shell, its skin, but have failed to touch its true heart. The island stubbornly maintains its silence, remaining an unsolved enigma that refuses to yield to any attempts at resolution. Perhaps it is in this elusiveness that its true nature lies. It represents not merely a treasure intended for capture and appropriation, but rather a profound mystery to be contemplated and pondered rather than subjugated. The legendary money pit, the mysterious swamp, the unusual geometry of scattered stones, and the artifacts found, all these are just individual fragments, pieces of a mosaic that never fully comes together. Every new clue attracts and draws researchers forward, but then the earth closes again, as if reminding them that some truths are not simply handed over, but relentlessly pursued by those who dare to seek them. Thus, Oak Island has transformed from a mere geographical location into something much greater. It has become a kind of mirror, reflecting the deepest human aspirations and an insatiable thirst for knowledge. People drawn to its mystery seek not only precious gold or ancient relics here, but also the very meaning of existence. Confirmation that history continues to hold unsolved secrets, and that our modern era, rich in knowledge, has not yet conquered every facet of being. The island seems to whisper silently that the past never truly disappears, and beneath every new layer of soil lies another untold story, patiently awaiting its moment. This is how, through the ages, the legends of the mysterious Templars continue to live and evolve. It is quite possible that the exiled knights, fleeing persecution, transported these priceless relics across the ocean, securely sealing them in a carefully constructed vault of oak and clay. It is also not excluded that later, the Rosicrucians or Freemasons continued their mysterious guardianship, skillfully adding new layers of symbols and even greater secrecy, making the puzzle more complex. Or perhaps, the island's mystery dates back to a much deeper antiquity, connected with civilizations whose names have long been erased from our memory. Each of these hypotheses possesses its own persuasiveness and allure. None of them can be proven with absolute certainty, but perhaps this is the true meaning of Oak Island's existence. It continues to exist not because its mystery has been solved, but precisely because it remains unresolved. Its profound silence is its greatest strength, and its stubborn resistance to any attempts at revelation is the very reason it continues to captivate minds and hearts worldwide. Allow yourself to imagine this island, illuminated by starlight, where its mysterious swamp shimmers in the silvery moonlight, and ancient pines silently whisper their secrets in the wind. Beneath this seemingly calm surface lies a secret, untouched for many centuries, patiently waiting in deep darkness. Whether it is untold treasure, a priceless relic, or a grand revelation, humanity may never fully know. Yet this alluring mystery tirelessly calls us forward, through generations, across boundless oceans, through the boldest dreams. Oak Island continues to beckon with its promise that history still conceals unimaginable wonders. Perhaps one day the secret vault will finally be opened, revealing its treasures to the world. Or perhaps it is destined to remain sealed forever, becoming a mystery without end. Until then, the elusive whisper continues to carry across the island, and Oak Island continues its serene slumber, vigilantly guarding its ancient secret under the tireless watch of the tides.